Here we are. I'm so excited to have you here.
I am too. Thank you.
Just what a privilege. And it's so fun for me because I hope this doesn't sound too weird, but I've like literally kind of been counting down like, okay, since she's her exam, it's been how long until because
Hmm?
versus when we're allowed and
We're finally free.
hey, I can ask her for a favor. So for dear listener, I we know each other
We
through
do.
LCSW supervision.
Yep. Meg,
And
the reason I am who I am.
no, the flattery, thank you. Oh my gosh. Not at all, but also like and just formative for all of us,
Yeah.
like for so much. And so as I was saying to you before we hit record, like this is such an important topic that I'm just so excited to jump into all of it. Like, well, it's like we'll get there. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for people to hear your voice and have your experiences and to really jump into this. But before we do that, can you give a little backstory? Give a little like, how did we get here?
How did we get here?
What do you do? How did you get into this?
Yes. So I started how where should I begin? So I am a millennial, so I grew up with video games, naturally an online person, and then they were always just, video games. I was never like a gamer, but then when I was in my MSW program at University of Washington, I was doing my internship at a high school and found myself working with a lot of young boys who were very into gaming, there was a lot of stigmatizing happening with them. I also, my partner worked for Twitch at the time. So
Oh,
the
sure.
other side of my world was very ingrained in video games and the gaming industry. And I just really saw like these kids were being completely misunderstood. There was a drastic misunderstanding happening. And I think the one key kiddo was one who was an esports player, was winning competitions, was very like committed to this. And parents were supportive. He was doing this whole thing. And the school, he wasn't doing horribly grades, but wasn't doing the best in grades. And the school just kind of was like, this is a bad kid. He's not going anywhere. I'm like, we don't say this to our football players though. Like, this is a
Uh-huh.
committed kid who is dedicated and like practicing, like, and it, like, so sort
Mhm.
of fell into that. Found a couple of like-minded therapists out there who were looking at just the geek and gaming population as a whole and got really into it. And just the way that I think there's always kind of been that stigma from, I mean, even the 80s, right? With anything geek and gamer of satanic panic and all this, like, this is bad. This is something that's rotting our brains and this very black and white thinking. And really got into how do we see the positives from video gaming as well as actually balance when there is a problem and there is something maybe not the healthiest behavior going on. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, that I feel like I'm just going to jump right in
Okay.
because I feel like I was going to ask that later, kind of in the way I was envisioning, but also let's just roll with it. Of like, people ask me anytime I'm guesting somewhere, or even when I have guests on, and they'll just, depending on what their specialty is, they'll ask me, like, when do I need to seek therapy? And of course, me sitting in my place of privilege and my bias as a therapist, I'm like, now, everybody,
What,
now,
2 weeks ago,
everybody.
like,
Now,
mhm,
yes. Oh, you're thinking about trying to conceive? Now. Oh, you're in the middle of fertility struggles? Now.
yep.
Oh, yeah, baby number two? Now. Like it's a very, and I'm not saying, again, I do also think everyone could benefit from therapy. So no matter what your
Of course,
reasoning for going in,
the
the answer is
bias.
still now. I was thinking about this last night, really, of like, out, like when do you start recognizing that the gaming has this is like the opposite. I wanted to get so much more into it, but I just came right here, so I'm doing it. It'll be great. Like when do you reckon what are the things that tell a person like, hey, maybe I need some help with my patterns of behavior? What does that look like? Is this getting in the way? What does that look like? Because I really don't know the answer. If somebody asked me, I
Right.
would know.
Right. I mean, I think the therapist answer is it's different for everyone. I think in general, though, one of the big things that has instigated a lot of my clients, as well as people I've talked to, who to kind of like see like, okay, this is a problem,
Mhm.
is really starting to use it for escapism, really starting to
Yes.
like, I cannot regulate without this, or I cannot regulate when I'm doing this. So it's like a lot of the like rage quitting and stuff like that. Like I'm like completely unable to regulate within the video game. And then you also get to the someone's complaining a lot in my life that I play video games too much, and that those typical kind of indicators. But yeah, I think it really is the same with I do not like the term like technology addiction or video game addiction. I think it's a little
Okay.
different. We're dealing with a behavioral addiction, first of all, like as opposed to a substance. But and there are differences. But I think you're kind of getting into a similar kind of pattern of, is it preventing you from being able to function? What is it? The 4Ds, the distress, dysfunction. I can't remember two of them now, but yeah.
Something about sometimes coming on a show where, or like there's like a
I know it's like
record light in your face and you're like, I've never learned anything about anything ever.
I
What are
should not have my
words?
degree.
Ah,
Yeah. And these days, so where I work now, I'm on the education side, but my company, they have for I work at HG Institute, and Healthy Gamer has a streaming thing for video gamers and just people in the tech world. And a big thing there is also, I think, where video games and gaming in general has also become jobs, has also become it's so integrated in some people's lives. So that balance also is becoming more and more difficult for people when this is your job or your side hustle or something, but it's also your hobby. It's also a way that you take care of yourself and have fun, but then you worry about numbers and stuff.
yeah. Well, I feel like that part, and again, thank you for and I hope that you throughout this, if I am using language that is
Oh no, it's
the best, please let me know. Like, oh, Meg, actually, we don't say addiction. We say like, because I want to make sure that we're intentional. And that's why, again, first of all, just selfishly, sometimes I'm just like, oh, I get to have my girlfriend on. Like, I haven't chatted with Alex in a little while. He was so great. So that, but like, but this really is something that I'm so interested in. Like, my spouse plays Call of Duty, not every chance he gets, but and I love that for him because his college friends still play, and so it'll be so great. I'll walk out and like our best man will be on and be like, hey, Thrash, like,
Yep.
so, and I love that for him. And I grew up, and it's funny because like we just watched We're All Sick over here. Uh,
Everyone's sick everywhere,
right,
I
we
think.
do this every days, and so last night we had a movie night on a school night, no notes. And we watched Sonic 3 because it came out. And in the opening is a bunch of old school Sega Genesis game video play. And
Mhm.
my 5-year-old's like, oh, my cousin has that game. My cousin has that game because my parents still have my Sega
Oh
Genesis.
my God.
And so my son attributes that to being my nephew's, but I'm like, that is mine and Uncle Chris's, but whatever. So I'm sorry for the tangent, but like it's so interesting. As much as I remember being outside as a child, I can also tell you like how to beat this king and Aladdin on Sega Genesis and how to get to this level of Paperboy and
Right.
Golden Axe and all of that. So just like trying to find that way to balance. And I know a number of like the people who listen to my show, if they have parents or if they themselves play, like how do we participate in this in a way that we're being intentional and that we don't like hover over our children and tell them it's a bad
Mhm.
thing. And my goodness, there are people out there making millions of dollars,
Yes. Yeah.
which I think you would argue the same, perhaps argue is a strong word, but like, well, I don't want my kids sitting inside practicing because they may never make a penny off of it. But you could also say the same thing about, any sport.
Mhm. Mhm.
The difference being, of course, they're outside, they're in a team environment, they're moving their body.
Right.
Whether or not they actually get an NBA scholarship to the NBA. Oh my God.
If only. No. Yeah. A scholarship to
Scholarship to get,
college, all these things.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's just kind of all of that and being, so again, I just want to like, please, if I say something, I want you to say like, actually, Meg, this is how we say that.
No, yeah.
Um, because that is an interesting spot. I have a friend who works for ESPN and he's done some of the games and I just, some of the stuff that he's told me about, again, the pots of some of these or the
Yep.
purses, what they call them.
It's
Wow,
wild.
so much money
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. I think the technical term from the WHO now is what they're investigating is internet gaming disorder, which I'm fine with that. Like I understand being colloquially, we understand what video game addiction means and is, but there is that difference between it's not quite heroin. Um, but I do think usually it's we could argue this for most addictions, but like it's the symptom of something bigger when it becomes really problematic.
Yes.
What else is going on? What are we trying to escape? What are we avoiding? That sort of thing, which is where, um, then the treatment isn't necessarily stop playing video games because now you're just removing one of the coping mechanisms.
Yes.
But it is, I think, rightfully so, because it is also the video game industry is exploitive. They make video games to become addictive, to be um, unethical, straight up, in some cases. And it's a really difficult place, I think, especially as a parent, to navigate. Just how do you do that with yourself? How do you do that for your children, especially because there's so much social and zeitgeist around video games of how do you just never let them play a video game? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so interesting what you were saying a minute ago. Anytime I have a client, no matter what it might be, what comes to mind is like a disordered eating behavior.
Yep.
And for me, I don't, I no one here is in the session with me, of course, but like well, some of my clients do listen to the show, but like if you come to me and say, hey, I've started participating in X again, I am going to say, like, I am concerned about that behavior, but I'm much less concerned about the behavior. Like, what are we navigating?
Right. What
What are
drew
we
you back to that? Why?
A breakup, so I'm living in this game. And some of that's good. I mean, I even use the word escapism for a client who's going through a breakup last week of like, look, this is fresh. It's been a week.
Mhm.
Friday's Valentine's Day, like a lot going on. We want to make sure like this
Right.
it's not a distraction can be such a useful thing. You're going to therapy, you're showing up, you're being intentional. Sometimes it can be really nice to just like turn the brain off.
And that word intention is because I think especially video games, it's I think it's a huge ask to ever say like to a video game to a gamer or in a lot of ways anybody never play a video game, full abstinence, never play a digital game again. I mean, like, are you never going to play Minesweeper again? Like, you're never going to do anything.
Yeah.
So it is really about how do I do this with intention? How do I make sure like I'm playing the games that make me feel good? I'm getting those things out of it that are positive and fulfilling to me, as opposed to sort of just mindlessly engaging in this activity.
Yeah. And again, like I said, even and Austin listens, so hi, honey. He actually might literally be out playing right now. I'm not gonna, that would be slightly funny if I was just like, hey, let's just talk about this. I literally got him for his birthday last year. I went to our pinata shop and got it, and they had an Xbox controller. It was hilarious. And I walked in with it, and he was playing Call of Duty, and I like this 4-foot Xbox controller, just absolutely hysterical. And so, but it isn't realistic. We have a phone in our hands so much. So many of these phones are here. And again, for me, like we live, so many of our friends live in Mississippi, in Nashville. Like he doesn't get to see them, but he does get to have air quotes. His brother lives in Colorado. He gets to have air quotes lunch with them.
Right. Yep.
And I think that's such a beautiful thing while he's also massacring and ripping the heads off of people, whatever.
Right. Of course. I mean, yeah.
The kids
And
have gotten
that's
old enough now where we've said like we can't have that around them. So like if you want to play during their, rest time or something, that's fine. But when they come down, you've got to jump out of the game. Like
right.
it's different when they were so much younger. And so it is unrealistic, perhaps, to say but that's the thing too, right? Like some of these games you say they're created for that dopamine hit, or like
Mhm.
just hit this button for 99 cents more. You can get this next
Yep.
99 cents more. Like I am obsessed with Harry Potter, and I was so excited when the Harry Potter video game came out on your phone, but you could
Mhm.
only do like 3 minutes worth of the game, and then you had to wait for like 10 hours to repopulate, or you had to pay.
Right. Yeah.
I'm totally not going to pay for that. So then I finally ended up deleting it. But I know that's it's easy for us to get into that, and especially for the kids. Then we have trouble with the credit card being connected to the
Mm.
Apple account, which we didn't realize, and so they're hitting these
Yep.
buttons that they don't know about. It's just so
Yeah. Yeah, it's so much, and there's so many different layers there. And in a pure sense, because when you talked about Austin like playing with friends and everything, I do think it's important, and this is one of the things I've talked about at conferences, of looking at what are the things that people, because I think maybe not our generation, although still some of our generation, but especially older generations, there was that you're just playing a game. There's nothing there. And then there was a disconnect, especially when parents would start taking games away,
Mhm.
and there'd be meltdowns.
Yes.
But understanding what happens in games these days, it's not Mario where you're playing on one thing and it's just you. It's an entire social circle. It's you're with your friends. It's a lot of times the only, and we saw this especially during COVID, like the only time you're able to talk to people. It's for a lot of people, like especially youth, like they get to explore different identities and different things, and they're able to be more assertive and a different kind of personality that feels more comfortable for them to try out in a digital space than maybe at school where they're being bullied, or just
Yeah.
thinking about those, what's actually happening, as well as one of my favorite examples. Have you ever seen it's like a incredibly old meme of the Leroy Jenkins video?
Yes.
I like to show that as an example because they're strategizing in the beginning of that. And
Mhm.
they are like, they're talking math. Like they literally have an Excel spreadsheet they're talking about of what they're going to do. And there's a leader, and there's social dynamics playing out. And then Leroy Jenkins comes in and he's like, I'm not listening. And he runs in. But then they all run in and they have to like problem solve and get
Yes.
around it. And it's a great kind of like microcosm of what is happening socially, and how it isn't just playing a game. You are actually developing skills and making friends and doing a lot of this in video games these days.
Well, and this is catastrophizing.com/ get out of here. But like honestly, I was thinking about we were watching some movie sometime, and Austin was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so ignorant about this. I can't even come up with an example right now." But there was it was like a war movie or something, and he was like, "Oh, well, he's got this kind of gun, so he needs to be over here doing this kind
Mhm.
of thing." And I'm so sorry, you all. It would be really great if I could have actually written that down, that example.
I would know.
But it just came to, I wish I could, I'd like, hey, come in here real quick. But it was just really interesting because I was like, not for nothing. Like he certainly is not, please, people who are veterans and currently actively serving, it's not that. But he is exponentially more articulate about any sort of tactical maneuvers and thought processes. Like, should something like that ever occur? He does have not necessarily the physical skill, but the intellect of that, whereas I genuinely have none of that because he's
Mm-hmm.
playing this game. And hopefully that is a skill we'll never need to rely
Right,
upon.
right.
I just remembered in the moment thinking like, okay, cool. So we're on the same apocalypse team. That's good.
Yep.
So that's good that you know that because da da da. And again, really hoping to not need to use that skill.
Right, yes.
And so there are some of these things that can't, like you said, the planning and the strategery of it all, and that like
Mm-hmm.
that piece of it is not for nothing. And then also acknowledging, the dopamine hits that come from the bright color, the phones, and also computer, and also on the big screens. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a number of clients that I've encouraged, and I do myself. I don't use it very often because I'm hit and miss on my phone, but like the grayscale feature on your phone to be
Right.
able to turn those colors off so you're not getting that dopamine hit. I
Yeah.
actually had a client once find a red scale, which I've never looked for, but her phone was on a red scale, and she was like, I actually just put my phone away and went to bed because I hated it so much, and that was good because her goal was to
That's
be off TikTok.
yeah.
I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
hey, there we go.
yeah. That part is that becomes so interesting and overwhelming, of just because that's not even video gaming, right? That's just
Yes.
the corporate greed and the need for us to be addicted and kind
Yes.
of on something, and the exploitation of that, whether it's social media or just our phones, all of this. And it's just like, how do we
Mhm.
engage with these things that do legitimately bring us joy, but then are just ramped up by these processes and these sort of models that are being put in, and then of course even worse for kids. And there's not enough. There are discussions in the video game world about regulations about how to do that. I've talked to one video game design school who actually has like a whole ethics. I don't know if it's a department or just like a series of lectures that they do on like how to ethically design video games and at least get them thinking about it.
I love that
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
That's what I mean. Obviously, you and I as social workers have a requirement in every state um, for ethics. And that's interesting because there are some industries that don't have those regulations or
right. Or
expectations.
even know how to think about it. Like, I mean, the one of the scary things that I do get my friends with kids is any of the community aspects of video games. They're so toxic. They're so dangerous.
Mhm.
Like Roblox and what's the other one that the kids are playing these days? I can't remember. But like all of those,
I know
like
you're not asking me.
yours aren't old enough yet.
They're 5 and 3.
Okay.
So
Soon.
we have a Nintendo Switch that I still don't know how to plug into the. I don't want to sound. I'm not technologically inept. I edit this podcast and post it myself. Like I'm not fully,
That's
but there are some things that I'm just blissfully ignorant to right now.
mhm,
Um, and but that is interesting though. I like when do I and we let them sometimes play the Mario Kart. And
mhm,
that's fun. And they're 5 and 3. And like I think that's fun, but also it's not a thing that I think about and default to.
right. Yeah.
And then their friends will start because they have some friends who do Minecraft. Is that the one they
Mm-hmm.
were thinking of maybe? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Minecraft. That's one.
Um, and I don't know. I want to hold space for everyone, like anyone out there with children of any age where it feels scary. It's scary is the word. Like I want them to be able to explore that. I definitely remember that, but it was me and my brother maybe, and that was it. And we weren't connected to the
Right.
internet. There were no
Right.
people for us, and there were no people talking. I hear some of the stuff, and they're like tiny kids out here
Mm-hmm.
standing. And I'm
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
it
And
was
it's
just that.
overwhelming. And like you said, like it's a whole new vocabulary, a whole new thing that as a parent you have to learn and try to keep up with when
Mhm.
it's moving so quickly. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's like a whole part-time job on the side just to keep up with what is this game even doing. Yeah. I,
So how did you, let's walk back. So, okay, like I said, I jumped straight into like, when do people need to get help? Because I thought about it last night and was like, I have such a stock answer of like, everyone needs a therapist, everyone needs a therapist, everyone needs a therapist. And I still, again, everyone out there, gamer or not, I believe, get you a therapist, y'all. Get a
uh-huh.
therapist. You can just do some like self-awareness. Yes.
Yes.
Soapbox.
Personal growth. Just do it. It's great.
Right? So I just wanted to jump right into there, but I do want to come back a little bit. So obviously we met because I was lucky enough to spend 2 years with you as your LCSW, or not even 2 whole years, right? Because you had some.
No, no, I signed with you. You were
Okay,
first for 2 years.
yes. So 2 whole years as your LCSW supervisor,
Two
which
and a
was
half that
just
I extended. That's what it
it did
was.
because of Washington, which I mean, obviously you've got your S now. Bless. We're both licensed in the state of
Right.
Washington, which is. And I remember this is a bit of a tangent, but I don't care. And I'm telling it. I think we're going to lose a couple people here, and I also don't care. But I remember, I'm going to tell this story. Um, we were having a supervision. It was just the two of us, and it was January 6th, 2020. And you
Mm.
and I sat in our blissful place of just the two of us, nothing else going, like no other technology. I mean, we were on Zoom,
Mhm.
but like phones were away, pop-ups weren't coming off. And I said, you know what, Alex? It kind of feels like we've reached a little balance, a little homeostasis. Like things just, I don't know, I've kind of got a calm feeling today. And you were like, yeah. I don't really remember you saying necessarily in the opposite direction or one or the other, but they're definitely like, we're just kind of like, okay, here we go. Like things are, oh, it's 2021, excuse me. So January 6th, 2021. And then we both get off and then pick up our phones
Yep.
and see what's going on in DC. And I tell that story anytime that comes up. And I'm like, yeah, I was on with the supervisee, being over Pollyanna over here, thinking that the world was changing for the better. And
Breathing. We're on a good path.
yeah, I mean, I still want to be optimistic. It's a scary time right now. It's hard to be a therapist in general with so many things going on. But so yeah, I mean, we navigated the beginning of the pandemic and me moving to Kansas City. We used to meet in person at a
Right.
library in Houston, and then I moved to Kansas City and we moved to Zoom, and then the world shut down and um
Yeah.
all of that.
Quite a time to be going through supervision. Lots of change happening. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I was curious, you had talked about in supervision your interest in this space. Again, your partner working for Twitch and all of the technology that you're interested in. I'm just kind of curious how you like what was it that really inspired you to kind of jump in with both feet to focus on the intersection of mental health and digital spaces like gaming and youth? What
Yeah,
was that inspiration?
that's a good question of what made me kind of like really double down on it. I think so. I surprised myself and I started learning this about sort of my therapist self in grad school. I think if you'd asked me in my undergrad or kind of when I dreamt of being a therapist, my like ideal population who I would have clicked with would have, I probably always would have said like anxious, depressed young girls
Yeah.
going through and dealing with a lot of that type A, over control, that sort of stuff. And then it just sort of happened that the kids that I really connected with, that I felt I was having a real impact on, were really these young boys who did not have anywhere to sort of turn, where they were taken seriously, where they were able to safely somehow access their emotions
Mhm.
in a serious way. And those were like in grad school, those are the clients that like stick with me, that are pivotal. And then that sort of continued where it was just, and I think also the rise of this sort of the toxic masculinity, the male mental health thing, all that was sort of going on at the same time. And it was like, okay, this is somewhere that I genuinely like professionally and personally, like I get fulfillment working with these kids. And there I work with female gamers as well. There just happens to be a gender skew there.
Yes, 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 yes.
And yeah, it felt like this is a place that I at least have some, I'm not like a hardcore gamer, but I have the knowledge of, I have the interest in, and I can engage with them sort of on their level with, which is not something that a lot of therapists can do or have taken that interest in. So that's the other side, is now I'm like in the educating therapist side of
Which I
um, yeah. But so yeah, I think it was just sort of this natural thing of the, hey, this is an important issue that I think especially young people are dealing with, and it's something that I really enjoy, and it has a profound impact on some of these clients. So
it really does. It's an interesting thing of like, I feel confident in being able to navigate conversations with, avoiding harmful interactions and with any population because I'm a social worker and we're taught to be able to have these conversations. And I'm very solution focused, so it's very asking questions. I try not. I genuinely don't have an opinion. Generally, like,
right.
did I get back with my ex? Like, I really honestly couldn't say.
Oh,
Like, yeah, but here are my questions of that. I right. And so this definitely is a space for me where, of course, if one of my clients came and was like, oh, by the way, I also have this, I would be able to navigate and ask some questions. But I really have to imagine that so many therapists and clinicians like me really do feel ill prepared, underprepared. Again, like I can have these conversations, but I would love to have more information on that and being able to really understand how to articulate some of those things and recognizing when the pattern of behavior becomes, but I guess that's another thing too. Sorry, I'm bringing it back a little bit of like the same that you would have with any other behavior. Are
yes.
other people in your life starting to have some of the recognizing a pattern of issue? Is it becoming something? What are we trying to navigate by using this, whatever it might be, if it's disordered eating
Yeah.
or gaming or and so but I really do coming all the way back again, like there's so much more that we don't know as it continues to evolve from Sega Genesis in the 90s to everyone has a computer, a high grade
All the
in their
time.
pocket.
Right. Yep. Well, and I think one thing that I'm slowly, I think, getting to the point where like I'm advocating for more and more is when we meet a new client and we're doing an intake, we ask them about their drinking. We ask them about how often do we ever ask anyone about their digital habits? How much are you on social media? Even like
Yeah.
simple, like how much are you on social media? What apps do you use the most? Do you play video games? Just to even get any understanding. It's like this whole massive now part of our lives.
It is.
We just completely breeze over as therapists a lot.
It's really interesting. I've had this conversation a lot recently of like how eye rolly it would have been a decade plus ago to be like, when do I take down pictures of me and my ex? Or
Right.
like when a famous person unfollows another famous person and it's news, but it's like, yes, it eye roll, haha, but it is news. Like it's a big deal when
Yeah.
celebrity X unfollows celebrity Y because that's a public beef
Mm-hmm.
that we're aware of, and we can take that as seriously or not, depending on how interested you are in the topic. But like that is actually news. Facebook official, are you posting your
Yep.
partner on social media? Like, is there a reason why you're not? Like,
Mm-hmm.
as much as like, because I gotta be honest, like I'm not old, I'm 39, but like, and what is old
What
anyway?
is old?
But Facebook came out when I was a sophomore in undergrad.
Yeah.
So like I've got clients now I was in high school when they were born. And I, again, just it's parenting is so much. And, I've got friends who've got kids who are in junior high and trying to navigate those complex emotions and interpersonal
Mm-hmm.
dynamics. And not for nothing, like it's not important if somebody won't post you on their socials.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
as eye rolly as like elder, Oregon Trail millennials, Gen X, boomers certainly might think that actually is now just a part of our fabric of interpersonal connectiveness. And I love that idea too. I do find myself probably more talking about like related to sleep with social, like
Mm-hmm.
with phone. Like, tell me when you're putting your phone down, and can
Yeah.
you get up and go pee and brush your teeth before you pick up your phone so you can just kind of like be grounded in the moment before you move off into digital world. But I love that idea for our providers out there of like asking that question when you meet a new client.
Yeah. Even if there's not a problem, just know like, hey, how is
Yeah.
technology involved in your life?
Yeah,
Yeah.
non-judgmentally, because
Right.
it's the same as like I used to teach suicidal ideation and self-interest behavior at University of Kansas in the grad program, School of Social Welfare, and it's like, when was the last time you thought about hurting yourself? Not do you, because
Right.
like, everybody does. Everybody thinks like life would be easier if I weren't here. Not everyone is actively suicidal and meets diagnostic criteria for inpatient hospitalization, but
Right.
normalizing that and validating that like we all do that
Mm-hmm.
and that intentional language, the same here, just compulsorily, is that a word? In a
I think so.
compulsory way, asking, what is your digital
Yeah. Yeah.
wallet?
And one of the ways, because I think that's really important, the non-judgmentalness, because I think it's something that it's so normalized in society. And we do this with a lot as therapists. Like we forget like to bring that in. But like I think about especially like there's drama going on TikTok. Someone posted this on whatever's going on. And I work with a lot of younger people. So it's real easy for us to be like, this doesn't matter. This isn't but we wouldn't say that. And we all sort of, I hope know this of like, when a teenager goes through their first breakup, we know you're going to get over it. We know this, it's your first, but it's their first heartbreak. They're wrapped up. They've got hormones. Their brains are not formed. Like
Yeah.
remembering that for a lot of these situations. And that is real. It is serious, even if in
It's
our
their
adult life.
whole
Exactly.
worldview.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
luckily, they do have social media to show them more than what we
Mhm.
knew, what I knew, even what you knew growing up, that literally elementary school felt like that is the entire world.
Right. Yeah. Who else is
And
there? Like,
being empathetic instead of being like, oh, you're 14, get over it. Like, no, that really is their biggest heartbreak
yeah.
today. And
And how do, it's not helpful to just say get over it, or it's just a video game, or it's just a personality or something. It's like, okay, like why does that bother you? Why are you so angry? What does that mean to you? And that's one of the things I when I work with parents is really like talk to your kids about the games, not about what's the rating of the game, are people getting shot, but like talk to them about the story, what's going on, what intrigues them about it, who do they play, what kind of character do they like to play, what kind of video, like there's, so one of the things that I think is fairly easy, to grasp for practitioners, parents, just at a high level is like there's different types of games, you know, like if it's a MMO or if it's a
Wait. See what that is. I don't know what that means. Multi,
massive multiplayer online.
no, I have massive multiplayer online.
I think
What does
I'm
that
gonna
mean?
be. So that's like, so think of WoW. So it's like the online thing. It's a huge, massive open world,
Mhm.
and then it's online. So there's lots of
Okay.
multiplayers online.
Yes.
Yeah. And then like I'm gonna get all of these on RPG, which is usually more that's role playing game.
Role play games. I know that one. Yep.
Yep. Strategy, which is more Call of Duty and those sorts of games. So there's lots of, but I think understanding like, hey, what kind of game do you like to play and why? Because people do have like, my partner loves survival games, which I hate because it's just like hoarding resources and trying to stay warm. Like it's just, I'm like, why
Yeah.
do I want to play that? But he loves that because there's a challenge.
Yeah.
They're seeking achievement. So I think really like talking to them, understanding like, hey, what is it that you like, and engaging around that to understand why this is important, and also what are they getting.
It's all about that connection and communication. I want to be very clear. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, but I I do try to do this now. And I have clients who have older kids and trying to be intentional about that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And you're allowed to have your thoughts and feelings. Are they based in longitudinal research and studies? Like, yes, of course, we want your kids to get up and move.
Right.
And gaming, unfortunately, has, as a matter of course, a lot of sitting. And so I love the idea. And I don't know what, maybe perhaps you have a specific, like, yes, everyone, the recommended is that for every 50 minutes that they're up walking for 10, or I don't know, but that
Right.
can be a conversation that you have and talking education to your child as well. Like, you need to move your body. Like,
Yes.
are you doing stretches or whatever that looks like? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also at the same time, like while you're trying to have expectations of them, like meeting them where they are as well.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different world than what we grew up in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And having the ability for us to, I don't know how I want to articulate, like meet them where they are, allow them to live in their world with their peers.
Mm-hmm.
Safety is our number one job, of course. Mental health, and also, yeah, understanding. And even if you don't understand the game fully, like I can't tell you how many times I've tried to play Call of Duty. I am I'm so bad because I would love to play with him and I
Right. Yeah.
don't know his friends. Like, so I would like to, but I'm so bad at, which is weird because I dated a guy in undergrad and I played Halo and I was not bad. So I don't understand if it's like my older brain or what, like my teenage brain could get it, or I was like still, I don't know what it is, but I've tried, but I'm so bad that I
Mm-hmm.
hate it. So then I can't get better if I don't practice, but I want to practice because I'm so bad at it. So I hate it. So I don't, so
Yep.
that's why I
Yep.
have Call of Duty. So I keep trying to come up with these, like there's a cooperational game that's supposed to be really good for couples, but I got to tell you,
Is it? It takes two.
yes. And
Yes.
can we just, I'm not, when I tell you, I had another couple friend over and I had to have my, I had to have one of the couple play with my spouse because he's a gamer in
Mm-hmm.
his own way. And I couldn't get, I'm like, this game is, no, I don't know.
It's a hard game, to be fair. Like
It's so hard. I'm like, this game is going to make people break up because you've got a gamer and a
it's definitely like a test of
non-gamer.
your relationship.
I'm like, we don't believe in heteronormative. We don't believe in gender stereotypes. In my situation, I am a woman who is married to a man, and I am the one who wants to play more. Women play games, da da da. Y'all, if you're here, you already knew that. But like in my situation, like that's gonna make. Luckily, he was like, this seems not. Can we should stop? Yeah. And then he like
This is
tried to
not
put
good.
it together, and I'm like, there's no way I could have ever done that. So just setting ourselves up for like if you want to play with your kids, it's not Aladdin, it's
Yeah.
not Paperboy. So
Yep.
bless.
Yes. Yeah. And that is, it's interesting because I love, because I'm not someone who, aside from maybe Fallout, I don't like guns. I don't like having to aim stuff. I don't like fighting and melee. So like the war games, those things, I'm just like, I'm not good at them. So I really do like what's happening in the, what other kinds of games can we create? Like It Takes Two. It's such a creative, like what is even happening, or the puzzle games, or like the cozy games. I like to see, let's get some more variety happening to appeal to a larger audience, and just have different kind of skill sets out there. Because yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
tricky. There's a pretty popular YouTube channel, and it's oh, I can't remember what it's called now, but it's a girlfriend who watches her boyfriend play video games and just gets really invested in it. And she doesn't
Oh,
play ever, but she starts playing sometimes. But like it's mostly just her watching and like getting really invested, like it's a show. And I think there is,
I'm gonna
there's
have to find that.
connection that
That's
can
so funny.
happen. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's so that's so funny. I'll have to find that, or if you think of it, you can text me
yeah,
that because that sounds hilarious. And I don't know. I think if just, I mean, this is just, if we could all just unclench and be less
right.
judgmental. I literally go with be curious, not judgmental. Thank you, Ted Lasso. Like, if we could all be less judgmental about screen time and tablets, if we're being intentional about it, right? Like, if we're able to help, if you've got a therapist, or whether or not your child is a therapist, if you yourself as the parent, like helping young people develop healthy online habits and boundaries by asking questions, by turning to professionals and getting this information, so we're not just knee jerk,
Right.
judgmentally ripping things away, but we are also, again, I hold all the space. Like, our number one job is to keep our kids safe. And there are a lot of people out there who are trying to not have our kids be safe. So,
Yes. Yeah.
yes,
Terrifying world. Right.
yes. Do you have any idea? Like, I have a couple clients, weirdly, back-to-back clients. I had never heard of this game. And then my 2 o'clock said something about it, and then my 3 o'clock said something about it. And I was like, what is happening? Called Finch. Are you familiar with Finch? It's an app for your phone.
Oh, yes. I just saw this yesterday, actually. It's like you take care of the little bird, right?
It's like a, now, hello, Oregon Trail
Like a
Millennials.
Tamagotchi.
Tamagotchi
Yeah.
Nanos,
Hmm.
where you, and I started it and I tried it and it wasn't for me, because like and you can really customize and personalize it. And I think that that's what I really need to do, is sit down with it some more. But it gives you some default goals that I was already doing. But you feed, air quotes, feed the bird by doing activities throughout the day that you need help being reminded to do or feeling
Hmm.
motivated to do. Is that kind of that external factor, the gameplay piece of it all.
Yeah.
Are there any, so that's certainly one for everyone to look into. Are there any other, like, any other ways that gaming can be a tool for improving mental wellness?
Yes. So that specific thing is called gamification. And usually it's like how to like the McDonald's Monopoly thing is like gamifying buying McDonald's. But so like people have started like turning this in, how do we gamify behaviors that we want and encourage that. So Finch is a great one that's really popular. One who, and she also has an incredible TED talk. Her name's Jane McGonigal. Um, she has a book called Super Better, and she talks all about specifically for mental health, gamifying. And she has an app called Super Better as well that takes sort of the naming and constructs that we know from gaming of this is a quest, this is a final boss, this is these sort of things. And you can set like, so she had, I'm not 100% sure. I believe she had a TBI and was really struggling with recovery from that. And so she's a neuroscientist and started and was researching video games already, but got this idea to like at one point, like taking a walk around the block was her final boss. And like, so you're able to put all these things in and it prompts you and it does a whole thing. You get like, pop-ups that are like, congrats, you did this and things like that. And I think those are really interesting ways. Same thing with like you talked about like walking, like how can we take these ideas that and also your Call of Duty character, what do they have to do to be able to do the things they want to do, and just relating it to those sorts of things. But yeah, I like gamifying. I think there's some fun opportunities there, and there's definitely, so Super Better is an app. Habatica is a similar app.
Mhm.
I know Finch, there's one where you also get to plant trees, and I think they actually plant trees in real life too. But um yeah, I do think that that's a fun way to, especially for younger kids, like, hey, you're going to get this badge, or those sorts of things can be
Mhm.
really, again, just taking something that they're interested in, and how do we get you to do a behavior that we like as well. And then you can also do the just pure junk food behavior sometimes.
Yes, right. Because not everything has to be. like rest is productive, fun is productive, I think is
Mhm.
another way we can look at that too, right? Like
Right.
sometimes you can just play a game for the sake of playing a game and you don't have to learn anything, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I I want to acknowledge I sit thus far, can't say it enough. They're 3 and 5. I sit in a real place of privilege. Like my oldest was 8 months old when we moved to Kansas City when quarantine started. So I did have to take 4 months and be a stay-at-home parent, which was not my thing. Oh my gosh, bless. Um, but like I didn't have to do homeschool. And we don't participate in the trauma Olympics. We all had our own trauma, but like I'm very aware. Like I don't know how I would have navigated having to do at-home school with a third grader.
Right.
And I talked to a friend once who took a youth group out and took them to McDonald's, and they didn't know how to order because they were at that age where like they had been in quarantine for 2 years, and at the age before quarantine, their parents had been ordering for them, and now they're in like later middle school, junior high, and they don't know how because like how do I talk to it? Who like
Hmm.
so I like if we could all give a lot of grace to a lot of the people um in these spaces, it really is there's a lot there to recognize. And I do like the idea too. Like, what are your thoughts on, and this is a we could literally spend hours
I
talking
know.
about this and have very specific examples of very specific age groups. So I realize the audacity of this question, but like, how do we though broadly, and maybe this question's too broad, help the children understand their role of the responsibility of responsible game playing? Like,
Mhm.
you do need to get up and walk after, if you're going to play for an hour, you have to get up and walk or drink water, or like if someone's talking to you, like the safety component. How do we help instill that internal motivation while we're also guiding it externally as well?
Mhm. As not a parent who has the privilege of not having to try to converse with a 3-year-old every day,
Yeah,
um,
it's
you know,
something.
I think it's always that it's that building awareness, it's engaging in those conversations, it's that the elicitation of like, hey, how do you feel when you stay up too late for, like, how do you feel when you stay up too late playing this? What do you think the ramifications, like just engaging them and like and having them sort of generate that in a natural way, as opposed to again, very aware of, this sounds real easy and it's not, but like, you know let's have the conversation of what is it that you want. Do you want to feel connected to your parents? Do you want to be able to talk to your parents? Do you want to give them time in whatever language is natural,
Mhm.
and age appropriate? And like, how do we do that? How do we do that? What are good? I think one of the things that is really important, especially when navigating when there is a problem, or I think just when you start introducing video games or most things, it's really, it's a partnership. It's involving the child in, or the partner or whatever, and like, we're going to do this together. I'm not the only one setting these boundaries. I'm not the only one setting the rules. There are some rules that I'm going to hold firm on. But what is it that you want? Where can we compromise? I think that is really important to bring them into that conversation.
Yeah. And that's great for those of us, again, privilege, 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 privilege.
Yes.
I'm very lucky too. I have this podcast space. I knew you before this. I'm so grateful. There's so much I still don't know. Like before I started my podcast, I didn't know pelvic floor physical therapy was a thing. Like that's a thing. You can like, I mean, I know Kegels, but like that was basically it.
Now
So it's
TikTok
just,
taught me about that. So
I mean, hello.
yeah.
So it's really interesting. I'm so grateful for the place, and that's why I'm so excited to have this platform to share with the people who do show up and listen in all the many countries. And it's so lovely. Like, and I am in a space where I can start that now. I know there are some parents out there who are recognizing struggles with their 13-year-old who's been playing for almost a decade.
Right.
And it's so hard to change. I mean, if change was easy, we'd all be doing it.
Mhm.
Adults are the same. It's the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
So
I don't know that it gets easier.
yeah.
Yeah.
Giving grace to like if you struggle to put down the flaming hot Cheetos at night before you go to bed,
Right.
you also can relate to the fact that your child has trouble putting down the game controller or being redirected away from it. Not to say that we don't hold those boundaries, that we do it empathetically
Right.
of here's a solution focused goal. Here's what I see for your gameplay. Here's what I see for that. I like what you said. There's buy-in. What do you
Mhm.
see? Where
Yep.
can we compromise? Well, I'm also the parent, and this is the end of that. I'm not going to be spending any more money on this,
Right.
certainly for. I really need you again. My thing is just like the movement piece, like getting up and walking, and
Hmm.
that is the one piece where it's like, no, nobody knows for sure that their kid is going to go to the NBA, but in the basketball, they're still getting the team environment and
Right.
all of
We
that.
do know for sure physical movement is healthy. It's
We
good.
know
Um,
this. So, okay, fine. So if you're going to play for an hour, then I also need you
right.
to insert physical movement for half an hour here.
Right.
What that looks like.
Yeah.
And I think allowing space for a slow evolution
Yes.
versus cold
Right.
turkey shutting this down or
Yeah.
what that looks like.
I
Again,
think that's
it's
especially when the behavior you don't want as much, whether it's you or somebody else, like
Mhm.
remember that they have to learn how to do that. Like it's like help them figure out, how do I stop playing video games, or how do I start moving more? It's not going to happen overnight. They might not have any idea. How do you get through that distress tolerance of I hate sweating and breathing hard and this doesn't feel good? Like,
Yeah.
and again, not all parents are in a position to do that, but I think that's really like there's a lot of frustration around kids. It's like you're just not doing what I want you to, but it's hard.
It's so well, and then of course we've got our neurodivergence conversations as well.
Right.
And I think I've mentioned this on the last three episodes. So listeners, thank you for sticking with me. But like I have ADHD, Austin has ADHD, my 5-year-old has ADHD, he's been diagnosed. And all of my ADHD and my 5-year-olds are very similar, and my spouse's is very different from mine in a number of ways. And so it is relatable, but also sometimes it's like, what is this doom pile over here? Why is the couch
Right.
like and so having that again, the empathy, like meeting from curiosity of what that looks like, or making some of these small changes. Again, this is literally three episodes in a row that I've mentioned this, but like instead of just telling my 5-year-old to go clean his room, I have to say like, hey, can you go put those dinosaurs away?
Right.
And then
Mm-hmm.
come back. So, and then can you go put your pajamas away and then come back? And then can you go put your underwear and your socks away? And like making them small pieces. So if your goal, certainly number one safety.
Always.
I
Mm-hmm.
hear you and I see you. So if that is it and it needs to be some sort of cold turkey thing, hi, right here with
Right.
you.
Sure. Of course. Like, no, you cannot talk to the 35-year-old
Yes.
old man anymore.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So safety, yes, safety, 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 yes. And then like how can we make these smaller, more bite-sized, manageable attempts at change with real intention, conversation, like you said, the buy-in piece, um, with empathy and compassion,
Mm-hmm.
with the goal again, like not ruining your relationship.
Yeah. And yeah, I think the patience, because I think also in the like the buy-in is also like asking your child, like, what is it that like when I start yelling, for instance, like when I start yelling, just shut off the game, and I don't understand that you can't just stop because you're in the middle of something.
Mhm.
Like that's a boundary they can say, like, hey, if like give me 15 minutes, please don't say you have to turn it off right now, because contextually that's a bigger ask. But like, having that, like, listen to them of how they want to be, how they want it navigated as well. Um and, and speaking of ADHD, I think in a not gross capitalistic way, video games do lend themselves to, as someone else with ADHD, the ADHD mind. If we think about like what do video games do, they give you a quest, they give you
Yes.
a clear hierarchy, a progression, a
Yes.
rubric. I miss school so much because I'm like, grade me and tell
Ah,
me I'm done and I did fantastic.
yes.
And video games give that in a lot of ways. And so like you said, like taking it of like, hey, go put the dinosaur away, and then like, good job, like celebrate the wins too. I think that's something we always like. It's like, well, this is the bare minimum, of course you should do your homework, but let them celebrate it a little bit.
I It's so tough because certainly, and we can go off into more addictive behaviors and other things. Like we don't celebrate with food, but we do celebrate with food, but we don't reward ourselves with food. Like
Mhm.
having the conversation, being able to articulate the difference in that. And I, it was like if I'm doing something for me that I would do and trying to not just be like, well, you're 5 and get over it. Like if I am, like, we're all sick this week. And so if I'm not hungry because I'm feeling terrible,
Right.
and my 5-year-old says he's not hungry and feeling terrible, like, let's take a moment and say, now again, he's not 39. So some of these things can't be apples and apples.
Yep.
But like, I'm not going to force you to eat right now. Like, why don't you just sit for a little bit and relax?
Mhm.
And then, whereas before, usually like we're getting up, we're eating, we're moving, we've got our routine, we got to get to school by this certain time. Like, how can we allow for that space? Like, how do we sell? Like, are you not celebrating yourself, adult? Can you start it?
Sometimes, usually not, but
Do
yeah,
you,
it's important.
do you feel, and I'm asking you, dear listener, do you feel like Alex and I are being ridiculous right now and saying like patting, yay, check? There's an episode of Friends where they're like, passport, check. And they're like, saying check to. I don't know. My mom always did it, like check.
Yep.
And like that, you can start doing that too. That's okay. Like life is hard and sometimes not fun. So the more joy that we can bring in, if you're not doing that for yourself as an adult, maybe think of ways that you can do that as an adult. And then it won't feel so strange to you to do it for your child because it's a lovely thing to do for yourself to be like, hey, I just did that. And maybe it was just sending that email I didn't want to send, but I've been dreading it for a while and I did it.
Yeah.
Check. Like, yay.
Yeah. It's also how our brains work. Like if we just take it to a purely like it's a
Reptilian.
reward. Yeah, it's like it's it's what is it called? Let's see, there goes all my it's this the Skinner box, right? It's like you're do by not rewarding yourself, by not giving yourself a little cookie every time that you do something good, like you're unnecessarily making it hard. Reward yourself when you do something, and it's like your brain will wire to like, oh, I want to do this more. We're not
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
complex sometimes.
And of course, the pendulum can swing too far. And again, like we don't, there's a difference between like celebrating with food and rewarding yourself with food. So like you
Right.
don't want to, anyway, I'm not a
And it doesn't
registered,
have to be food. Also, like obvious. Yeah, we're not.
but being in that space of, that's the I wanted to jump into that a little bit more of like, hey, if you think that's a strange thing to do for your kid because that's a bad habit to get them into, like, no, no, how about we get you into that habit as
Yeah.
well? Like the two of us are giving you permission to celebrate you a little bit.
Yes.
It's hard. We have so many things we're responsible for, whether or not you have kids, whatever you're doing for a job, if you're in school, whatever it is, whether or not there's so much. And so the ways that we can find some of that internal motivation or the checking of the boxes, or like for type A, the trope is like sometimes I'll have a list of something and I'll like write it down that I've done it just so I can cross it off, even though I've already done it. Like,
Yep.
cool, fine,
Yes.
great, cool, fine, hi.
Yep. Yes. That's our Amanda, who we both know. She's that like it's like here's my pretty paper, here's my checklist, because you get a little bit of a like a win when you get to check something off, even if it's just like I made the checklist. Check. Like,
Yes.
that's at least a step in the right direction, and it's okay to celebrate that and recognize it. I think sometimes we're just like on to the next thing, on to the next thing, and then we wonder why we feel like we've accomplished nothing.
Yeah. Oh. And another thing, and I apologize, my girlfriend Alicia, one who got me into social work, was reading a book, and I'm fully we're just today is the day of drawing blanks, but that's fine because we're still. I mean, I think the material's still good, but I'll try to think of it, or maybe I'll ask her and put it in the show notes. A book that she was reading of like throwing a try party. Like I tried to write a book and I
Oh,
failed,
I
but
love
I
it.
tried. Like
It's
celebrating
effort.
the effort that we put out, and of course we know colloquially, and I don't know if any of us internalize this appropriately enough, but like when we fail, we learn how to navigate the next time or to what we can try differently, but we don't necessarily hold on to that enough of like, hey, I learned something new instead of just like, you suck, you suck, you suck.
Right. Yep.
And like giving ourselves that space and allowing that for our kids. I recognize myself even defaulting sometimes of like, it's not that hard. I need him to do X. Why is he not doing X? He needs to get on X. Like just whatever. I need to stop using that word. Like X, XYZ.
Yeah.
Need him to do XYZ. He needs to be doing that. And why not? And it's like, because he's a human and he's young and he's tired or it's boring. And we know one of the diagnostic criteria of ADHD is having trouble doing things that are not interesting to us.
Mhm.
And so again, meeting with empathy, like
Yeah.
how can we have some of these conversations? I think it's a really great place to start. And again, the buy-in too.
Right.
Like if you are dictating something to your children, again, safety, 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 safety. Yes, that is a
Always first.
taken. That is
Yep.
absolutely correct. And then everything else outside of that, in terms of like the structure of time spent versus time moving versus all of that, is where we can try to have some buy-in.
Right. Because usually there is buy-in of, like, do you want to feel like your body's aching? Do you want to feel like you can't do these things? No, I do want to do these things. And if that isn't, or like, do you want to fail school? No, I do want to do well in school. I do want to go to college.
Mhm.
And if there isn't the buy-in, then maybe we're dealing with something else that's happening when there's, like, then we're dealing with what else is going on. They need to be in therapy. We need to be looking for depression stuff. What's happening? Why don't they want things?
Right.
Um, but speaking of failing, though, another good thing that video games are good at is failing is built into a video game. It's expected. You are supposed to fail and then skill up and gain skills, and then you try again. That is
Ah,
the entire mechanic. And so framing things that way of like, hey, okay, it didn't work this time, but we restart and now we know something and we have a little bit more strength or whatever, and we try again.
yeah. I actually really like, going back to right, like failing and we learn and we move forward with that new knowledge. And we're not starting at zero because
Right.
we've tried and we've got new
Yep.
information. That
You got
actually,
experience points. You get to
yes. My 5-year-old, and bless, I try to give very little identifying information. I don't like to share their information, but like, he's not a very, I don't mind sharing this. Hopefully he doesn't come back in the future and be upset, but he is not a very good loser. Like we're getting better. We're playing like card games and whatnot. So I'm actually enjoying this idea of like, if I have him playing video games and he fails at, the medium boss, and then,
right.
then I'm able to articulate, well, yeah, now you get to go back and try again because you knew that going left didn't work. What if you try going right this time?
Mm-hmm.
And being able to, say, like, I'm getting a free parental therapy session right now with like things that I can do, and being able to be so. And again, there's intention there. There's collaboration. I'm involved, and I know sometimes some of y'all are like, oh, you think my kid's gonna let me in the room and sit behind a
Right. Yeah.
couch? Oh, ha ha. Okay, again, privilege, privilege. I got a 5-year-old. Hi, hi. I know, I know. But I am saying, like, I just had that thought right now of like that would actually be really great for him
Mm-hmm.
because he really gets upset when he loses sometimes.
Yeah.
Like we'll talk about that with his therapist at some point. But yes. So I was curious, like with your work, like kind of what's next? What is the next thing that you all are looking toward? How you hope to continue to bridge the gap between mental health and digital spaces? What does that look like for you all?
Yeah. So at least what I'm sort of working on. So I'm developing a coaching curriculum with the whatever I always mess NBHWC, the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. And really sort of creating a curriculum that meets the health and wellness coaching sort of requirements and criteria, and builds in some basic core kind of mental health stuff, as just anyone who's dealing with anyone within the healthcare system or not, kind of core knowledge, as well as that digital wellness piece, that like, let's ask about this, let's talk about these sorts of things. So working with that with coaches at sort of the subclinical level, where we're not at the point where we necessarily need therapy or need to be involved or on medication or anything. And then at the same time working within the industry on sort of how do we integrate these things? How do we integrate digital wellness as well as coaching and peer support and clinicians, and kind of bridge some of that gap, just because we have such a need and the mental health crisis.
Mm,
And
absolutely.
we deal with our own sort of, as clinicians, our own sort of stigma and accessibility difference that people might not. They're like, I had a horrible experience with a therapist, they were the worst, they told my parents everything, whatever that is. And maybe a coach has an in. And really, as long as we're practicing ethically, as long as we're aware of the scope of our practice, like, it's connection. We all know that's what actually helps. And I think really finding ways that as an industry, we can kind of all work a little bit more collaboratively and integrate each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's really great. It's nice to have, I mean, access, access, access. That's why I always think
Yes.
like it's a privilege for me to be like, everyone needs a therapist. Well, not everyone has the ability to pay $175 for a session every week or every other week, or insurance benefits, and then yes, again, it is tough because like you said, kind of people have been burned by not great therapy experiences in the past, like
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned, a lack, a betrayal of trust in disclosing information to parents or whatever that might look like. And I can appreciate people having some stressors behind that, and also finding the people who have been educated appropriately
Yep.
through the
Exactly. Yeah. Like
that you're talking about.
I will be the first to say, like, there are some coaches out there who should not be doing anything with anyone in mental health. But there are actually, like check histories, check credentialing, that sort of stuff.
Yes.
And yeah, I think Access, one of the really cool things that I've seen with Healthy Gamer is they provide services internationally, and seeing people accessing coaching in countries that there is no mental health, or it is incredibly stigmatized to the point where it's dangerous, and being able to access support in a way that is a different kind of roundabout way has been really, it's incredible to see how like important having another, and it sucks, it's unfortunate that in some places that's the world that we live in, but also what do we deal with the situation right now while we fix the bigger picture.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for this discussion. I'm so excited. This is the first of kind of any that I've ever had the opportunity in this area. And so I know so many of our listeners are going to be excited to get some of this content and feel a little more at ease, knowing that there are people out there like, hey, it's not fully a free for all. Some of us are out here trying to there are mentally healthy ways to participate in this.
We are
And
trying, yes.
absolutely. I'm going to put in the show notes, where can everyone find you, or perhaps your agency? What information would you like for me to share for everybody?
Sure. So I specifically, I am the director of the HG Institute, which provides education and continuing education stuff for coaches and clinicians. We're more on that this year. And then Healthy Gamer is sort of the parent company. They have healthygamer.gg on YouTube, where Dr. Alec Kanoja has lots of content on gaming, on mindfulness, on mental health as well. He's a psychiatrist. And then our coaching is also at healthygamer.com. If you're interested in sort of what kinds of coaching there are, I think we have parent coaching, we have individual coaching, creator and career coaching, that if you're curious about what that could look like, it's a cool resource that exists.
Wonderful. So something for everyone, parents, providers, students, children, everything as
Yeah.
well. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
If everyone could go out and check out more about Healthy Gamer and the Institute, that's great. And any questions that you might have for follow-up, shoot me a DM. We'll send those along to Alex for you all. If you get a chance, please like, rate, subscribe. I hate having to do this every time, but it's how the algorithm keeps being fed. So, 5 stars would be lovely. And remember to stay curious and not judgmental as you go about your week. We'll see you next time.